with that, I'd like to turn it over to Tony to talk about how we're going to strategize to maximize. Now, this is the part you've all been waiting for, so I'll let him take it over and go from there.
Well, thank you, Nick. That was wonderful. I don't know about you, but he went through that pretty quick, and I appreciate it. Good thing I know, taught him everything he knows. So the good idea to start with on strategize to maximize is to remember that nothing that is happening in this project is nefarious. This is all a pre-planned thing by the FCC. We realized that on the full powers, they had a distinct advantage because they had years of knowing it. Because of some very good coalitions that you were part of, and because of your pushings, you convinced Congress to allocate some of those funds towards this. You were, as you know, secondary. So you should all give yourself a pat on the back of the hands, high fives, whatever you want to do, because a year and a half ago or so, this was not going to take place. So start off with a kudos to you for sticking with the process and making it happen. Some of you may already been displaced because of T-Mobile and other issues for repackers. The good news is if there was no monetary value there, now you're eligible for this money. And as Nick said, nobody, and when we first talked to you, did we ever say it was going to be 100%. We were saying 50, maybe 70%, and then looking at how do you, as the small entity or part of a larger corporation, get the rest of the cash flow for this project that at this point now is mandatory. So with our deep search into the FCC, which we do on a daily basis now, we review every single 399 and every single line in it, and we prepare lots of reports, which we will be kicking up every day and on a weekly basis, depending on what they are throughout this process. But for now, as Nick said, there's over 825 of them now, and it looks like 100% reimbursement. Don't want to go too over on that, but that changes everything, right? So the good news is if you were looking how to fund the rest of this, you may have a little cash, we'll get into that now, available for what really needs to happen, and that is your transition to ATSC3. Mike Gravino, the low power television and now the next gen, he also is a broker, and many of you know him or you have your own, but if you're looking to operate this is your family or this is what you're doing for your life, this really won't apply to you. But a couple of years ago, you were either going dark or you had to come up with the funds, and that was really had an impact on your station monetarily or operationally. If you just go to the new channel horizontally, you will be, if you're looking to, something happens later that you need to divest, or if you're looking to divest, you will be limiting the ability of the new owner to transmit into the latest technology, which will then minimize your recovery. Mike Ravino believes that right now it's about 50 cents a pop. If you go to ATSC3, it's $1 a pop, which is 100%. I'll get to that in a moment. So our strategy is to maximize this once in a lifetime project for you. Everyone on this has never done this before. They may have moved a transmitter, but to the same channel or such. Well, I take that back. You guys have probably moved a lot of channels. John Owen will attest to that, and probably all of you, that's the case, working on many of these things over the decades as you were secondary. Now you're being treated as primary. So let's take advantage of that now. And I'd say that in the kindest words. Again, nobody's putting money in their pocket here. No one's walking out with a Ferrari. We're going to look at it from how do you get the best equipment, the best services, so that this transmitter and your system will last you its lifetime of 20 years, 30 years nowadays with some of these equipment. And how do you, what does it prepare for obsolescence? So if you do that now, you minimize the costs later. So one of the things we're looking at here next would be the invoices. Some of you may have already gone, and I got good news on that. Depending on what you've done, you may have gone de minimis. The FCC will not pay for interims. So they won't pay for that. But we believe, and we are working through the FCC and some other vendors to verify that what you have now does not have to be your final solution. Meaning if you got the lowest that you could because of the funds available, it doesn't necessarily mean that's what you have to turn in. You can, if you want to, let's say at this point, that is sunk cost, whatever that costs you, if you're willing to keep that as a backup or whatever you want, you may be able to go shopping and get the newest equipment that's out there from the last time you've gone, or do some upgrades, or do some other preparations that you normally would not do on your restricted budgets. Don't want to say that's for sure, but we believe that's the case. And anyways, interims would be on a case-by-case basis. And what I mean by some of this would be that the ATSC 3.0 requires vertical or elliptical. If you just throw up your horizontal antenna right now, that's great. You're going to be operating a brand new system, brand new channel, and you will be on the air working fantastically. Situation will be if you're looking to divest or something does happen and you do have to divest, you will be, again, at that 50 cents a pop versus $1 a pop. Now, V-pole on your antenna, depending on the size that size, make, and model, you're looking at $2,000 in this case to $14,000 on a $463,000 upgrade deal. That's an upgrade. The FCC will not pay for your V-pole or elliptical unless you already have it, which I'm assuming you don't. So the idea would be the new transmitters are already ATCS3 capable. I don't think you can buy one right now that is. You may have put one in a year or two ago that wasn't, or maybe hard to upgrade. But the current ones we know all have that in there. So it's either a software key or a small exciter change or something very de minimis in the whole process right now, depending on which make, model, and manufacturer you go to. With that said, if you put in the new line, the new transmitter, and your new HV or your horizontal antenna, what happens is now someone buys you or wants to go to V-pole, or you want to go to ATS3, you have to take down that top end antenna and swap it out. So you got to buy a brand new antenna, pay to have it picked and replaced 100%, and then you got this existing horizontal antenna that is paid for but kind of worthless. Or you can try to budget now, figure out how to beg, borrow, and plead to get it. But like I said, if you were looking to get 50% of this and your deal was around 100,000 and you got 400,000 in your budget now, you may have some extra money that you were already pushing your boss. If you're the boss, you know what you mean, for that extra. So if you have that money, we implore you to look at that in your configuration. That's part of that strategize to maximize. The FCC will pay to put your antenna up. You may as well get that done for free for the $2,000 to $14,000 upgrade if you can afford it. I know everyone has their own circumstances, so you might not be able to do it at this time. The good news here is, since it's 100% reimbursed right now, and this is a small portion of it, we're working with the manufacturers, but you can too. See if there's a way that they'll, if it's a $25,000 antenna and the FCC is going to pay 23 of it, maybe you could finance that $2,000 or finance it. I don't know, or something like that. But the idea is for that amount of money, it's worth looking into. That's the strategizing part of it. Same thing with your transmitter. This is going to be very important. Nick alluded to it earlier. Reasonableness. The FCC has done this as reasonable. All other relocations since 1997 have been on a comparable basis. This is now reasonable. Most people on this call are right now are engineers, and our definition of reasonable, if I went around the room, would change from engineer to engineer. We could come up with a pretty good range, but to be exact would be very difficult. So the FCC is going to rely heavily upon not your 30, 40, 50 years of experience, but upon the consulting engineer's report for your link budget. If it comes back and says, hey, to do the 3 ERP or the 15, you need this, you're using this antenna, this line, this is the transmitter you would use. Good news is the FCC can't tell you how to engineer it. That's the good news. So you get to choose that 100%. If you haven't used one, you're probably going to need one because they will be looking at the reasonableness depending upon what you get, what you put in for your transmitter. And we know all that. We helped you with that as for now. If you already put it in, again, we're looking at maybe a final solution or not. But if you needed a 50-watt transmitter according to your existing system, but the system that would be best for the ATC3 is 100. That 50 they want you to pay for. Well, because to operate the VPOL portion of that requires more power. In some cases, depending on your antenna selection, you may get a different antenna with a higher gain and get a smaller transmitter, or lower gain, get a higher transmitter and swap that amount out. It gets complicated. And again, none of this is immoral, unethical, or illegal and nefarious. This is pure business. The FCC has allotted you $84,000 for up to a 2.5 kilowatt transmitter, of which, excuse me, we've all put in for that. If you got a $50,000 transmitter or a 5-watt transmitter, it's not going to be that. So we would look at, again, one, is there an upgrade cost? Again, if it's small enough, you might be able to do it on your own. 2, you have to look at what's reasonable. What was the headroom between the TPO and the operating of your transmitter that you have now? So if you had a 100-watt transmitter that was operating at 50 watts, you have 100% headroom. So if you order now if you need a 1 kilowatt, you may be able to ask for a 2 kilowatt because that is reasonable. That's what you had to begin with. Those TPO and headroom calculations, John Owens and your consulting engineer can do that to give you your reasonableness. So if they come back at you and ask you for that, we have an answer, and it's a third-party answer, which the FCC and all government agencies love. That leads me to, when you're looking at this, the engineering portion of it is all yours, right? So you're the final say on everything. We're looking at it from a reasonableness. We offer those services as well. Engineering, design, installation, we'll get into that later. We are not consulting engineers with the FCC, so we don't have a conflict with that. We use all outsources. We have a couple that we really highly recommend if you don't have one. Otherwise, yours is probably just as capable as ours. HVAC options. That's another upgrade. See, there's a lot of things that might be called maintenance, but there also will be upgrade. If you change channels from high to low, you may need to increase your HVAC circulation, or you may need to increase heat depending on your current configuration in your process. We don't know where you're at. A lot of these are in different configurations than the larger ones. So some of you, we've already gone out and done some assessments, so we know exactly what it is and what you're wanting to do. Some of them you will be getting those assessments so that we can work with you to manage the best way to transition this with at least amount of interruptions. HVAC is usually considered, because you have existing ones on your system, as we transition this, there may be a lot of things that will require, depending on the time of year we're doing it, air conditioning or heating additional to do your larger transmitter, to keep it cool or to keep it warm. So those are things to think about. And again, you can work, those calculations, and the FCC will accept those calculations. We've gotten a lot of HVACs, and you have that in your option right now. But those are all placeholders. And so the next thing is to come up with the reasonable side. The next one will be any vendor you got. Most of them are preparing for this, and we are working with almost every vendor out there for the last 4 years. Some of them, this will not be a surprise to as to how to work with the FCC and work with us and other consultants that you may be working with. Some, this will be new. Most of these will be your local vendors, any electricians, any HVAC guys, or any other disposal that they will have no idea what you're talking about. So, but if you have a relationship with them, they'll usually play along pretty well. So that when we prepare your vendors, usually what I'm talking about is the manufacturer vendors here, cash flow, like we talked about earlier. If you need a $50,000 transmitter, what we're looking at is we're trying to get that from you. We're going to try and cash flow this before you have to pay your vendors. It's going to be tough because right now the FCC is all working remotely right now. And so the timing of what was, like Nick was alluding to earlier, which was rather short and rapid that they're working with the full powers on, is probably going to be hampered. One, they didn't increase their personnel by 100%. They have 987 of those that they're working on, and now over 800 of you added on eligible stations all in one day. So how that's going to roll out real quickly will be, right now you are eligible The next step is they're going through each one of your deals, 399 submittals for reasonableness. They're doing this all behind the scenes. They are also working with the manufacturers to determine what they're doing on this so that they can understand without having to go to 900 people. So if they can work that out with a few manufacturers, it saves them 900 phone calls and emails. They will contact you either directly via phone, or they will call you, email you. We implore you to please use, I'm going to get into that later, but please do not go to them by any means without talking to, I would like to consider us one of your consultants, your attorney, your consulting engineer, I would reconsider with yourself, because you remember you're working with the FCC. They are not looking to hand out anything to you, but they're also not looking to minimize anything you're doing, but they are not your friend, right? You might know these people, but they're not here for you. So the idea is before you talk to them and negotiate, because they're not going to come back and go, hey, how can we increase this for you? The object is, hey, we don't think you need this much. And that's where the reasonableness comes in, and they don't. And so you will get an email. We will we'll send those to you, what they look like. It'll say, WLS, you put in for $463,000. We reviewed it. We think you're reasonable for $200,000. They'll give you a list of what they think it is. To show you where we're at right now, to discuss it, we received one back where the FCC provided new line, said that's reasonable, but they said they wouldn't pay to install it. We're still waiting back on that one, but so right over there, we would believe that is reasonable, and we expect it to be, but please don't call up and, we know you all. Some of you will call up and go, what in the heck are you talking about? This is reasonable. Please let us do that. We'd work with the FCC every day, each and every day, starting at 8 o'clock to 6 p.m. We work with everybody over at the FCC. Used to be Hussein. What a wonderful man to work with. I hope he's enjoying his retirement. I hope he comes back as a consultant to really help out with all this. So you may know more on that than I do, but there are other capable people that are stepping up. But as you know, they're working behind the scenes now and not at their office. So there's a lot harder for them to, go around the cube or go into Nick's office really quickly. You got to make these calls. And as you know, working remotely is a lot of what we're contending with now is not going to be as effectual as being in the office to get answers quickly or unanimously. So when we get to this, the cash flow, again, what we're looking at is work with each one of your vendors. We could do that for you. You can do that with us. It's for cash terms. We know it's going to be probably 100% right now. So that's a real relief. But you might not have $50,000 right now. You should have been trying to plan if it was 50% around 25 or work terms out of it. So we're working with the manufacturers to come up with some terms for you. And then they pretty much know the invoice requirements, all the big ones. Doesn't mean they do it, and each one has to be reviewed. As Nick pointed out, we will be working with you on that, and we're trying to minimize your touch. Basically, what we want to be is your staff member. You already have a full-time position, and then some, many hats, most of you. John Owen and I started this company in 2006 with the Sprint Bass relocation, and we've put in with the FCC over 14,000 hours going back and forth and making sure that every single one of our clients over the last 14 years now has received, knock on wood, absolutely every penny we requested, which is phenomenal. I'm not going to tell you it was easy. Some of them were knockdown, drag out fights, but ultimately John Owen and our team were able to win the reasonableness in every single case. Brand new towers, upgraded facilities, interims, brand new transmitter rooms. And again, nothing's nefarious. We weren't running around trying to, what are we going to do? The idea is if you needed it and it was provided, and we made the reasonable effort and showed that it was. Something that takes a lot of time. So you say, Tony, John, Nick, here's what I want to do. Staff member, right? We come in on Monday morning, 9 o'clock. We at your time. You go, okay, how's it going? Old news, new business. Let's go over there. Then we get tasked with that. So throughout the week, we're spending 1 to 40 hours a week on your job and make this happen. Report to you next week. Here's exactly how it went. Here's where it goes. And during the week, we will work with you. But everything flows through us. It would be the best thing for you. Again, disposable knowledge. These, the cracks and crevices, there's over 700 line items in the 399 if you go through all the expanding. Nick and I and our team throughout the nation know absolutely every single one of them and how to do it correctly and to make sure that it's hopefully done right on the first time. Now, they do have moving goalposts over there. So what we submit today may not work tomorrow because they have a review change. And so we get what they call an RFAS, which is Reimbursement Funds Administrator System. Again, government alphabet. We just call them RFASs. They come in and they tell you, what needs to be happening. Again, if it's a fat finger error, which happens, that's easy enough to fix, but they'll come back and say, we need something else. I know I'm going a little bit long, but those are the strategies where we get into this project management. We do the 399 assist is what you've got. QCOM is decommissioned over 2,500. John's freaking out over there. 25 transmitters from 7 kilowatts to 150 kilowatt, Sigma to IoTs, harvested all the equipment, transferred all of the liquids and made sure that everything was locked out, tagged out, so that it was completely done with the FCC standards, your standards, EPA standards, all that, and the electrical standards. Yours are a little smaller, a little different, but please, you got 220 running in there and all that. That's one of those things that's already in your deal. We do that. And some of you will have to decom first. Some of you have already gone. Some of you may like to keep it as a backup. Unfortunately, it's the wrong channel, so that doesn't work. I don't believe there's a resale for them, but if it is, you may want to keep it and try to do that. But we will decommission it and dispose of it as you will. We'll install it. John and Chris are our head of our installation teams and division. John is the chief of operations for Q Communications. And he's been in the industry longer than I've been alive, and I have a 20-year-old grandson. I know John's going to kill me after this, and hopefully he'll recover all this. Chris, would you run over there and make sure that John's doing okay? That's I say it every time, and it's one of those things. So John's one of you guys and one of us. He's seen many first and performed many first in this industry. I can't give John enough kudos. He works more than anybody I know. He works 7 days a week, 14 hours a day. He calls me up in the morning and says, well, while you're rolling out of bed, here's what I've done. While you're having dinner with your lovely wife, I'm still working. While you're at church, I'm still doing this. So I can't give John kudos enough. He is the backbone of our company. Thank you, John. Sorry. Thank you. I'm human. Anyways, all the teams and members we have out there working diligently, that's what I'm trying to say. We have a plethora of services to make this as easy as possible for you, like I said, as a member. But you can also get them. We know you guys are hands-on. You guys have been doing this your whole lives, and we'll want you to do it. But just remember that anything you do is not reimbursable. And the big ones, they made it real hard to get internal reimbursements. On this one, they said no. So yes, we want you to do it, and we want your help. We implore that you would get a professional to do this because it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And it's one of those things that you can leave this as a legacy, and you could be there the whole way and say, I want this bolt this way, this and that. But the idea is, if it's there and it's already in it, take advantage of it. So we're working with some manufacturers, and we may have some news for you later that would reward you for doing that. Coverage verifications aren't required by the FCC anymore. You're going to a new channel, and most likely, as you talked about earlier, an upgraded one with a vertical on it. And right now, the predictable is all you've got from the antenna manufacturer. At the end of all this, we've put it in there, and FCC is paying for it 100%. It behooves you to understand exactly what antenna you got up there. Is it doing better than you thought it was, worse than you thought it was? We've done many of these already, then the FCC's already paid for them. But to our clients that are, when they're changing, you're going to go through a lot of this. As they rescan, they're going to get all the phone calls. And what you want the phone calls to be is, hey, I just can't figure out how to rescan, not I can't get your signal because something's wrong with the line or the antenna, of which you have no predicting. So we go out and capture the actuals, which will tell you, hey, fantastic job. This is within 1 dB, 2 dB, and which is basically almost unmeasurable. Or it's completely offset, or something is wrong, aloof, and what is the fix, if there is any? Does it have to come down? What is the situation? We've got plenty of them right now where they are out of FCC specs. They don't even meet the contour. Supposed to be omni circle, and the thing looks like a 5-cent cigar from the 30s, which means it's underserving some, which there is in violation of their operating parameters, and they're overserving others, which is definitely a violation. Again, there's nobody going to come in and shut you down, but the idea is it's really going to mess up your service offerings, and it behooves you to understand. I don't want to go too much on that because that's way down the road. We talked about this, the reasonableness, preparing engineering backup, and that's what we call backup. So the SEC gets a hold of you and says this, please get with we should be the first, Nick should be the first person you call. And then we'll take it from there. If you want us to get your attorney or whoever else involved, you are involved. What does this mean? Please be calm. There's a reasonableness test to this. And right, as you saw earlier, when I said they would give you the line, but not put it up, by anybody's measure, that's not reasonable. So they may be testing your TPO, how you got that. We discussed that. I can't recommend Scott Turpey highly enough. He works almost as much as John Owen does. And he has authored so many reasonableness papers for the FCC that I'm beginning to call him Mr. Reasonable. But the idea is, if you don't have one, I would recommend Scott Turpey for your Lonis and Culver to help run these. If you got one, I'm sure they're just as fine, and we probably work with them as well. I just put that in our plug for me, and it's unsponsored. Right now, I can't do it enough. A lot of you, if you're working with us, you have some quotes for, you know, what kind of antenna and maybe some line and some transmitters that you're looking at, but the rest of it, start getting those quotes for that. We can help you with that as well. Because we do offer the engineering. In engineering, we roll it into the project management portion of it. We don't, and I believe in a lot of these, and I'll get with Nick on that. I think we put in field engineering. So that would be part of this as well. But we will help you do that so that you can navigate it. If you say, hey, what's this transmitter look like? We can do some analysis for you to give you the best options of what you want. Because again, unless you already know what you want. But the quotes, because everything's going to be based upon those quotes. And then the next thing on that is try to get the invoices. This is going to be a tricky cash flow thing we talked about earlier. If you have a payable invoice, it doesn't have to be paid by you. We submit that at FCC, they will reimburse it, doesn't have to be paid. So let's talk about that process very shortly. I overlooked it earlier. You did the 399 eligibility, which you are. You did your 399 submittal. Now we're going through the reasonable test. That's going to tell you how much money exactly that you can't exceed. And right now we think that's going to be 100% of what we've requested. There's a lot of place floaters in there. Like if you need a 1.5 kilowatt transmitter, the FCC put in $84,000 as a placeholder for a 1 to 2.5 kilowatts. You're only going to need 50,000 of that. So that 30,000 is going to be released to go back into the pot. So that is something that we're still working with the FCC on is that pot going to be open for change orders? They haven't said yes or no yet, but that's being pondered right now. So once they give you that valid, verified number that says, here's what you've got, and you agree to it, boom, then what we've got is they're going to finish all of them up. And on that moment, they're going to issue a public notice of the allocation. Now, as we experienced in the full powers, they didn't just go, okay, we got 2.75 or 1.75. You wanted 1.3 billion. We're going to give you 100%. They started off low at 50% to cover the equipment costs, so everybody could do it, knowing that these transmitters took months to get going. And then they've steadily raised it. Believe it's at 92% now, and it's going to be headed towards 100. So we believe they'll do the same thing here, where they'll come up with that reasonableness cost, and the allocation will be probably somewhere around 70 to 90% initially, so that they can kind of control it. And that'll cover all your equipment that you've got. and all and that. So I can go into way deeper in that, but that's how they're going to cash flow it at first. But that'll cover pretty much everything you need to do because you still got a lot of services and equipment towards the end. What we'll do on cash flow is if you got an invoice today from your transmitter manufacturer with the right terms, and that's what we're going to work on with you and the manufacturers, is where you don't have to come up with that cash today, where they may wait until you get reimbursed. We have no 100% yeses on that. They're all, the CFOs in each one of those companies are pondering what does that mean. It was a lot different sale when it was 50 to 60, 70%. Now that it's 100, they're really pondering that. So that's just one of the things on the horizon. I can't make any commitments to any of the vendors at this point. But that means you may be able to cash flow that until you get the money to your core system into your bank account, and then you pay them, and then that could help. Again, that's a strategize to maximize we're looking at. There's a whole bunch of other things in here. I just wanted to give you the heads up on that. I took way more than I thought about some of this. There's a lot more strategies on here. I can't give them all out of the box at the beginning. And when we come up against them during your reasonableness, that's when we will help you with those. Again, I can't stress enough, talk to your attorney. If you do get something, you have a question, please give it to us now. We'll go through them in a few minutes here. We will be up. So the next part of all this is with the FCC process is just all the paperwork that we went through. Here's a little small what you got. In your 399, we've put in your preparation 399, which you've already ordered and hired us to do. The assistance or follow-up, those are 35 hours or so. We've already done that. Project management. Now, everyone thinks that's project management, but that's basically, again, that's where we're your staff member. Consider us your sergeant. You come in and say, hey, I want you, this needs to get done. We do the 3 to 5 to 10, whatever hours is, while you're maintaining your other work that you're doing, or your station's on the air current status, or the displacement of it. And you can put in as many hours as you want. But this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. You don't have to hire us. You can hire anybody. But I just put it out there. The installation, you may have wanted to do it yourself. I implore you. We're working with the manufacturers to reward you for doing that. But this is once again, the opportunity. We've installed over 85 transmitters in this process. No other team in the nation for any manufacturer has installed more of those. And we've done them from 50 watts to 150 kilowatts with 4-section combiners, where the combiner costs $600,000 and it was the size of your house. So we've done it all. And John Owen and the 13 crew members that we got running, the Q crew, we call them, running around the country. Even to this day, they're running around with what's going on and making sure that every one of our customers are 100% satisfied. And to this date, we are. We've worked with some of your parent companies. If you're a sole, this and that, we look forward to working with you. Again, you can do this all yourself, but I got to ask if look the gift horse in the face and ask why. I know you're all budget conscious. Again, we're not trying to go against anybody's work ethic or anything like that, but it's just once in a lifetime. We do the decommissioning and the cover verifications. And the engineering, I didn't put that on there because we lumped that in with our project management, but John Owen again, and the other engineers we have on, because John runs that division. Second to none. You ask him and he knows what a hemostat is and how to do it from the old ones where you used to have to go kick them 3 times and put your bubble gum over here to keep her on the air for your old IoT guys. I'm too young for that, but John ain't. So far you've dealt with Nick and I on this project, and John will be jumping in after this, and he will be available for all that. And we've already got plans for all that to happen. So the next thing we're going to run into as we start wrapping this up is your action items. This one is kind of tricky because the FCC they have like 5 or 6 different email places where they come from, but just because, as you know, some of you may have had situations where the email has come to your junk box from the FCC, or you're in a position where someone wasn't checking that very often. Some of these things are time sensitive. As you know, the FCC is replying, you got 5 days, you got 10 days. Here you may have like 30 days, but it's imperative that we get that information as quick as possible. So we will be on a weekly basis asking you to check your email, and that you should be checking for the FCC at any given time so that you can respond to it or use us to respond to it as swiftly as possible to give you the most time to address the situation. We implore you. Part of the reason we want to do this, and most likely, is we don't want to Jerry Maguire You remember when they fired him? Where that day that they're going to do that public notice on your allocation, we've got a very large number of you that you're all going to try and call in at the same exact time with the same exact question. So we're trying to answer what you need to do now to prepare it so that you will be calm, cool, collect, knowing that the wolf is in charge. So what we ask you to do now, if any invoices that you have now, if you've already gone and all that stuff, please provide it to us and to Nick, and we will then start preparing them and making sure they're all ready to go, and then submitting them to the FCC so that the moment they say go, your invoice is in that chute. You know who you are and all that stuff, and Nick knows too. So we'll be getting with you individually on that, but please, at this point, just send them to Nick. You all have Nick's contact information, and he will make sure his team members do it as he hands you off to the team member that is assigned to you. You can always go to Nick. Don't ever think it. And if you need to go to me, and when John gets involved, John is a very good resource as well. He knows all sides of it. I'm tainted because I'm a rocket scientist. I'm at 5 miles a second till I got to you guys at speed of light, so I'm still catching up. But John knows all of it, and he can do that, ready to go. Again, the FCC regarding that, please do that. Again, the emails and the invoices, as soon as possible, get to us so that the flow, you're in there as fast as possible so that you're in the FCC button as quick as possible, because the others that are doing this by themselves, the other 800 people that did not retain us and only got 161,000, of which your average is 400 and some thousand, of which you may not use all of it. Some of you are, I think the least expensive one was $838. The most expensive one, it was $2.2 million. So there's a big, big difference between those two. The last one on this here is the CORS access information. There's two ways to do this. One, you have complete control. Right now we log in and help you that. The CORS is the financials. We believe you all have your bank account set up. If not, you should do so. It takes 4 to 6 weeks to do that, and maybe even longer now that they're working remotely. But what we need to do there is you can give us limited access. Obviously, I can't take any money. There's no way to transfer money out of that. But the idea is the FCC deposits that into there. And one of the biggest things that you will see, again, this is not like a business where you turn in a invoice for 12 services that they did and 12 line items and for 10 grand, and they write you a check for 10 grand. They will write you a check for each one of those 10 individual line items. Yes, 10 checks. So depending on which bank account you used, your general or a new one for this one, you're going to get these oddball amounts deposited in your account willy-nilly without any thing, and it's going to be very hard to reconcile. So through the core system, we can go in and find out exactly when and where and how much and make sure that they're right, and either work with you or your accountant, if you are the accountant as the man with many hats or the gal. We can streamline that, again, trading hours for activities. Let us do the hours of this, so we work with you de minimis, so your team is not impacted by this. So the important notice on this, again, is we do not know where we're all headed right now as far as this pandemic that's going on. So we know the FCC is working remotely and continues to do so, and we're in contact with them every day and every level. Our crews are still working full-time in the field and here. We will work until you tell us we can't work anymore because of your policies, or if there is absolutely no way for us to, and some of these jobs are multiple days out in the field, that we can't have our field crews stay overnight. Now, we are having some contingencies for that, and that has not happened yet. So those are still working timely. So everything right now is a go, but expect a little more delays as we get through this. And then once it gets going, it'll go from there. We're almost at the question and answers. I wanted to thank you. And if you could bring Nick back. If you need to contact, you have Nick's and I's, and we'll be giving you other people's teams as you get assigned.